In this activity, we are going to define what we call isms. We already know what a bias is and can understand individual bias. What we want to discuss a little more is institutional bias, how it happens, and what it is. Let's start out with defining isms. When we think of isms, many times we think it's a prejudice, but it's a little bit more than that. When we talk about institutional systematic isms, it's a prejudice plus power. So let's review. Prejudice plus what? Power equals institutional systematic isms. So it's an institution or an organization or group that has a prejudice and a power that can cause these isms to happen. Defining the isms. The systematic discrimination and exploitation of human beings based on their gender is called sexism. The systematic discrimination and exploitation of human beings based on their sexual orientation is called heterosexism. The systematic discrimination and exploitation of human beings based on their age or ability is called ageism or ableism. The systematic discrimination and exploitation of human beings based on their race is called racism. The systematic discrimination and exploitation of human beings based on their socioeconomic status is called elitism. Now that we understand that institutional systematic ism is the result of prejudice plus power and focusing on an aspect of human differences in a negative way, we can look at institutions. What are some institutions that perpetuate isms? Look at some examples below. As an educator, how does institutional unfairness and discrimination show up in education? In education, like in many other institutions, racism and other isms occur. These isms happen all over the country, and as educators, we need to be aware of them so we can be co-responsible and speak up for social justice. Hostile and insensitive acts may happen in the classroom, hallway, lunchroom, playground, and even faculty rooms. Sometimes there's bias in student discipline. Students of color are more likely to be sent to the principal's office than their white counterparts. When it comes to giving attention, there are some groups of students that are given more attention than others. There's also a bias when choosing curriculum materials. Some groups of students receive less instruction time than others. There's also a bias in attitudes. When it comes to hiring practices, there's a lack of racial minority teachers and other school personnel at all levels, even when there is a high number of minority students. The denial of racism actions always a way racism and other isms show up in education. The one thing we must remember is that we are all part of groups that at one point or another were oppressed or oppressors. However, that doesn't mean we are oppressed or should act as oppressors. In the next piece, we are going to explore the difference between the groups that we are identified with or our individual identity and our common humanity. But first, listen to Jaden's story below for another perspective.